An unnamed short story. Hi, it's Jay. Derek noticed the woman in the window. It wasn't that he was looking up to be Snoopy, trying to see into the lives of the people on the street. It was just a regular street with what he thought were regular people going on about their regular lives. Windows do offer an opportunity, however briefly, however incompletely, to get a glimpse of a moment in time of people's inner lives, the lives they spend inside their homes, away from prying eyes. Anyways, Derek was not walking down the street peeking into people's houses. He was walking down the street minding his own business, keeping a safe distance between himself and the people and the bicycles and the cars and the trucks that were also going down the street. He stepped to one side as an elderly woman passed with her yapping dog, straining on its leash, baring tiny white teeth at him. It was at that moment that a motion out of the corner of his eye caught his attention. It was a pure instinctual action to turn and look up. It could have been something heavy or sharp hurtling towards him. It might have been a bomber plane or an attack drone. Though this was unlikely, since Derek lived in what was mostly a pretty boring country where a fellow such as he was rarely, if ever, targeted. There were far more socially acceptable targets, many whom were also walking down the street. So Derek looked up to the motion and found himself looking at a woman looking out of a second-story window of a mid-20th century apartment building. The woman was looking up, at what he wasn't sure. The sky was quite clear of bomber planes and attack drones. The look on her face seemed a little sad to Derek, though Derek found himself seeing many sad looks on the faces of people around him. At least he assumed they were sad looks. He made it a practice not to go up to people and ask if they were sad. Every once in a while, people would interrupt him as he daydreamed by asking about his own emotional state, and he found that highly offensive. Around him, the yapping dogs grew fainter, and the noises of the cars and the constant dinging of bike bells grew fainter as he looked up at the woman. He couldn't really see her face, not her mouth or her eyes. Mostly he was looking at the underside of her jaw, which seemed pronounced, at least at this angle. Her hands were resting on the windowsill. He couldn't really even tell if she was young or old. Maybe she was in the middle, like him. Here she was, looking out while he was looking in. She just seemed sad, melancholy to him. He smiled. It was like they had a kinship. And then, as if that connection could be transmitted over the air, the woman looked down and met Derek's eyes. She was maybe a little younger than him, not by much, and her eyes didn't seem sad as such, or rather they seemed quite intense, though he couldn't tell if she was intensely sad or something else. It surprised him how much feeling seemed to radiate from her, even as her face remained utterly blank and unmoving. Derek found himself locked into her eyes. Really, he wasn't a creep. He knew that if you accidentally made eye contact with another person, especially a woman, you just nodded quickly and averted your gaze, or just looked away as quickly as possible, or smiled sheepishly, like wasn't the world funny? People looked at other people, but you weren't supposed to maintain eye contact. Everyone looked, but you weren't supposed to let other people catch you doing it, and you certainly didn't continue doing it with people, especially women you didn't know. At least not if you were Derek. Derek didn't know if the rules applied generally to all other people or all other males, but he was pretty solid on his own personal rules. But now he was staring into the woman's eyes, and she was looking into his eyes, and it seemed that everything else in the world had dropped away, and for a brief moment in his 42 years in existence, Derek didn't feel self-conscious at all. It was just him and this fellow human being, looking and just seeing each other. There didn't seem to be any judgments or feelings or anger or flirtation or... They just looked into each other's eyes. Who was Dante and who was Beatrix? Derek couldn't have been able to tell you. Or maybe she was a blank canvas or a page that he was trying to fill with his own bullshit. Because the next moment she was looking at him and it didn't seem that she has the beatific all acceptance that he craved. No longer was there a sense of an all-mother opening her arms to take him into her sensual embrace. Instead, really without there being any change whatsoever to her face, or if there was so subtle to make no sense that he can see it, it is more that she suddenly radiated wrongness, a sort of anger, of accusation, and righteous, implacable justice. And then there was a man beside her, a tall man with bald head, who seems to take up the entire window. Now he is framing the window while the window is frames both of them. And he put his hand to the side of the open window, and for an awful moment Derek was sure he was going to burst from the window and come howling down at him, like all those nightmares of things coming from him from above. Derek took a step back, and immediately a truck was blaring its horn at him, and the driver swerved around him, cursed him, calling him a fucking idiot. Back on the sidewalk, people already looking away, the truck screeching its tires in the distance, Derek looked up at the window. Only the woman was there still now, both hands on the windowsill, looking down at him. Blushing, he waved his hand at her. It was nothing, he was trying to say. He was fine. You don't need to be concerned. A huge hand grabbed him by the forearm, and he was dragged towards the building. It was the man, the huge man from the window. He looked up at the woman, appealing for her help, wordlessly. He finds he doesn't have any words. He yanks against the man, who is striding rapidly towards the doors. A doorman pulls the doors open. He is being dragged inside. "I didn't mean to," he protested, as he was pulled over the threshold. The big man smelled of smoke and leather, and he was terribly strong. The door swung shut behind him, and the doorman stepped in front of us, smiling, barring our entry. This isn't our time. This is Derek's moment. Weeks and then months pass. Those who would notice. An employer, a surviving parent. Acquaintances wonder idly, not really surprised. If someone was going to disappear from those they knew, it would certainly be someone like Derek. Whether he is alive or dead seems besides the point. He is simply not. Gladys walks down the very same street. A blackbird flies by, and she happens to track its path. It alights for a moment on a second-story building of a late 20th century apartment building. Then it flutters away. A man is standing at the window, looking up into the sky. Though she can't see his face, there seems to be something very disturbed about the man. He is very still, and from this distance she can't be sure, but he seems to be trembling. She often trembles in the depths of the night when she can't sleep. As if he can somehow sense her eyes, he begins to look down. But before they can make eye contact, a woman appears in the window too, stepping out of the shadows. She takes his hand and attempts to lead him away. He resists, pulls, turns back towards the window. Gladys's jaw clenches. Does he mean to hurt himself? But then a large arm reaches out and takes the first man's other hand, and together with the woman, the man is drawn back into the room, safely away from the window and out of Gladys's attention. She turns, after a moment, and continues up the street, careful of the other people, their dogs, the cars, and the trucks that all share her space on the street. And that is a very rough draft of an unnamed short story that I have half constructed, and I can tell halfway through the story where I stopped and then I restarted again because my tense was wrong and I had to kind of edit that on the fly. But I made the point of I wanted to read this story again after I'd written it to see how it is, and I figured the best way to force myself to do that would be to just use it as a part of my reading exercises. So yeah, there's a very, very rough draft of a story, which I can see me editing at some point and perhaps making improvements to. I've been Jay. More videos later.